Sarah Bennett stood at the window of her luxury penthouse in Dubai, her manicured fingers tracing patterns on the glass as she watched the sunset paint the desert sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. The view from the 50th floor was breathtaking, but it did little to calm the storm brewing in her heart. Just 6 months ago, she had been a successful marketing executive in New York, living what she thought was her best life. Then she met Karim al-Rashid at a charity gala, and everything changed. Karim was everything she had ever dreamed of in a partner: successful, charming, and seemingly progressive, despite his traditional background. Their whirlwind romance had been like something out of a fairy tale, with romantic dinners, surprise, weekend getaways, and conversations that lasted until dawn. When he proposed after just 3 months of dating, presenting her with a diamond ring that could have paid off her student loans twice over, she said yes, without hesitation. The wedding was a lavish affair that made headlines in both New York and Dubai's social circles. Karim's family spared no expense, flying in guests from around the world and transforming one of Dubai's most exclusive hotels into a wonderland of flowers and lights. Sarah remembered how her heart had swelled with joy and pride as she walked down the aisle, certain that she was stepping into the perfect life. But now, as she stood in her gilded cage, Sarah couldn't help but wonder if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. The first signs of trouble appeared shortly after their honeymoon, when Karim insisted they move in with his family in their sprawling mansion. She had resisted, arguing that they needed their own space as newlyweds, but Karim's charm turned to steel as he informed her that this was non-negotiable in his culture. The mansion was a masterpiece of architecture, with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and a staff of 20 to cater to their every whim. Yet within its opulent walls, Sarah felt increasingly suffocated by the weight of tradition and expectation. Her mother-in-law, Amira al-Rashid, ruled the household with an iron fist wrapped in silk. The older woman's disapproving glances and subtle criticisms of everything from Sarah's clothing choices to her American mannerisms were a constant reminder that she was an outsider. As if on cue, a soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Mrs. Sarah," called one of the maids, "Madam Amira requests your presence in the family room for afternoon tea." Sarah closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. These daily tea sessions had become an exercise in endurance, where she was expected to sit quietly while Amira lectured her on proper behavior and the importance of producing an heir. Sarah smoothed down her designer dress, one of the few Western items she was still allowed to wear, and checked her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at her looked polished and perfect, but her eyes held a sadness that no amount of luxury could hide. As she made her way down the grand staircase, her heels clicking against the marble, she couldn't help but think of her grandmother's words from long ago. "All that glitters is not gold, my dear." The family room was a testament to Arab luxury, with plush Persian carpets, intricate wooden screens, and gold-trimmed furniture. Amira sat regally on a velvet sofa, her black abaya immaculate, her face perfectly made up despite the early hour. 2 other women, Karim's sisters, sat nearby, their expressions carefully neutral. "Ah, Sarah," Amira said, her accent crisp and precise, "please join us. We have much to discuss regarding the upcoming Ramadan celebrations." As Sarah took her seat, carefully arranging her skirt, she noticed an unusual tension in the air. Amira's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, and her sisters-in-law seemed to be avoiding her gaze. Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from her best friend back in New York. "Missing you, how's paradise?" The irony of the question made her heart ache. Paradise, she was learning, came with a price tag that had nothing to do with money. As she slipped the phone back into her pocket, ignoring Amira's disapproving glance, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was about to change in her carefully constructed world. The afternoon tea stretched on like an endless desert, each minute dripping slowly like honey from a golden spoon. Amira's voice floated through the air, discussing the intricate details of the upcoming Ramadan celebrations, but Sarah's mind wandered to the strange tension she had noticed earlier. Her sisters-in-law, Layla and Nadia, kept exchanging meaningful glances, and there was something in their carefully controlled expressions that set off warning bells in her mind. "Sarah," Amira's sharp tone cut through her thoughts. "Are you listening? These traditions are essential for our family's standing in society. Your role as Karim's wife requires absolute dedication to upholding our customs." The older woman's dark eyes bore into her with an intensity that made Sarah's skin prickle. "Of course, Mama Amira," Sarah replied, using the respectful title she had been taught to use. "I understand the importance of these celebrations." She reached for her teacup, grateful for the momentary distraction. The fine bone china felt delicate in her hands, much like her position in this family. Just then, Karim's youngest sister, Nadia, cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should also discuss the other matter," she said softly, earning a sharp look from their mother. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. There it was, the source of the tension she had been sensing. Amira set down her cup with deliberate slowness. "Yes, perhaps it is time." She turned to Sarah, her face a mask of careful neutrality. "Sarah, dear, in our culture, family is everything. The continuation of the family line is not just a desire, it is a sacred duty. You and Karim have been married for 6 months now, and yet—" She left the sentence hanging in the air like a sword. Sarah felt her cheeks burn. The pressure to produce an heir had been constant, but this was the first time Amira had addressed it so directly. "These things take time," she managed to say, her voice steady despite her internal turmoil. "Karim and I—" "Time is not unlimited," Amira interrupted, "which is why we have been discussing certain traditional solutions." She exchanged glances with her daughters, who suddenly seemed very interested in their teacups. "In our culture, it is not uncommon for a man of Karim's status to take a second wife, especially when the first has not yet fulfilled her primary duty." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She set down her cup, thankful that her hands didn't shake. A second wife? The very concept seemed absurd, something out of a historical novel, not her real life in 2025. "It is a perfectly acceptable solution," Amira continued, as if they were discussing something as mundane as redecorating a room. "We have already identified several suitable candidates from respectable families. Young women who understand our traditions and would be honored to join our family." Sarah's mind raced. She had known about the possibility of multiple wives in Islamic culture, but Karim had assured her it was an outdated practice that his family didn't follow. Had he lied, or was this his mother's scheme? And more importantly, did he know about these plans? "Has Karim agreed to this?" she asked, proud of how calm she sounded despite the chaos in her mind. A small smile played at the corners of Amira's lips. "My son understands his responsibilities to this family. He will do what is necessary to ensure our legacy continues." In that moment, Sarah felt the full weight of her isolation. Her family was thousands of miles away. Her friends were living their lives back in New York. And here she sat in a room, full of women who viewed her as little more than a disappointment. The luxury surrounding her suddenly felt suffocating. The gold-trimmed furniture, the expensive artwork, the perfect symmetry of everything. It was all part of a beautiful prison. Layla, the eldest sister, must have seen something in Sarah's expression because she reached out and patted her hand. "It's not so unusual, you know. Many modern families maintain these traditions. The second wife often becomes like a sister." Sarah withdrew her hand as if burned. A sister? The thought was laughable. She stood up, smoothing down her dress with trembling hands. "If you'll excuse me, I'm not feeling well. I think I need to lie down." Amira's voice followed her as she walked to the door. "Consider what we've discussed, Sarah. Sometimes tradition offers the best solutions to modern problems." As Sarah climbed the marble staircase to her suite, her mind was already racing with possibilities. She needed to talk to Karim to understand if he was really considering this madness. But more than that, she needed a plan, because one thing was certain. She had not left her life in New York, her career, and her independence to become one. Wife among many in a golden cage. Sarah paced in her private sitting room as the desert sun began to set, casting long shadows across the marble floor. She had spent the afternoon alternating between rage and disbelief, her mind replaying Amira's words over and over. The suggestion of a second wife wasn't just an insult. It was a complete betrayal of everything Karim had promised her, during their courtship. The sound of the bedroom door opening made her stop mid-stride. Karim entered, looking impeccable in his tailored suit, his expression unreadable. "My mother tells me you left tea early," he said, loosening his tie. "She's concerned about your behavior." Sarah let out a bitter laugh. "My behavior? That's what concerns her? Not the fact that she's planning to find you a second wife?" She watched his face carefully, searching for any sign of surprise or shock. Instead, she saw only a careful neutrality that made her stomach drop. "You knew," she whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "You knew about this?" Karim sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Sarah, my love, you need to understand. This isn't about you. It's about family, tradition, expectations." "Don't you dare love me," Sarah interrupted, her voice shaking with anger. "You promised me, Karim. When we met, you said you were different. You said you wanted a modern marriage, an equal partnership. Was that all just lies to get me to say yes?" "I meant everything I said." Karim moved closer, reaching for her hand, but Sarah stepped back. "But you have to understand there are pressures you can't comprehend. My position in the family, in society, it comes with obligations." "Obligations?" Sarah's voice rose. "What about your obligations to me, your wife? Or does that word mean something different here too?" Karim's expression hardened. "You're being dramatic. This is a perfectly normal arrangement in our culture. Many modern families don't," Sarah cut him off. "Don't try to normalize this. You knew exactly how I would feel about it. That's why you never mentioned it before we got married. You deliberately deceived me." The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, the call to prayer echoed across the city, a haunting reminder of the cultural divide that seemed to be widening between them with each passing moment. "I love you, Sarah," Karim finally said, his voice softening. "You're my wife, and that won't change. But you need to understand that this isn't just about us. My mother is right. We need an heir. The family name must continue." Sarah felt tears burning in her eyes, but refused to let them fall. "And what about what I need? My feelings, my dignity? Or are those not important in your culture either?" "You're being unfair." Karim's voice took on an edge she had never heard before. "You knew you were marrying into a different culture. You can't expect everything to be like it was in New York." "Different culture doesn't mean complete surrender of my self-respect," Sarah shot back. "I left everything for you. My career, my friends, my life. I agreed to live with your family, to follow your customs, to learn your ways, but this is too much." Karim's expression darkened. "You agreed to live with my family because that's what a good wife does. You followed our customs because that's your duty, and now you'll accept this because that's what's best for our family." The transformation in his demeanor sent a chill down Sarah's spine. Where was the charming, progressive man she had fallen in love with? In his place stood someone she barely recognized, someone who viewed her compliance as a right rather than a choice. "And if I don't accept it?" she asked quietly. Karim's laugh was cold. "Don't be naive, Habibti. You're my wife. Your place is here, doing what is expected of you. Besides," he added, his voice taking on a calculating tone, "what would you do? Go back to New York? To what? You signed a prenuptial agreement, remember? You would have nothing." Sarah felt her world tilting on its axis. This man before her, this stranger wearing her husband's face, had planned everything meticulously. The prenup, the gradual isolation, the increasing demands for compliance. She had walked right into an elaborate trap, willingly giving up her independence piece by piece. "Now," Karim continued, his voice becoming businesslike, "my mother has arranged for us to meet with the family of a potential second wife next week. I expect you to be present and to behave appropriately. This is happening, Sarah. The sooner you accept it, the easier things will be for everyone." With that, he turned and walked into the bathroom, leaving Sarah standing alone in the growing darkness. The sound of running water soon filled the silence, as if he considered the matter closed, the discussion finished. Sarah moved to the window, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. Below, Dubai sparkled like a jewel box, full of promises and possibilities. But from her vantage point, it all looked like an elaborate illusion, beautiful on the surface but hiding something much darker underneath. The next morning dawned bright and harsh over Dubai, the sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sarah's private study. She hadn't slept, spending the night instead researching on her laptop, careful to use the private browsing mode she had set up months ago. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. Always have a backup plan. Sweetheart, even when you think you don't need one. A soft knock at the door made her quickly close the laptop. Her closest ally in the household, Fatima, a young maid who had shown her kindness from the beginning, entered with a breakfast tray. "Mrs. Sarah," she whispered, setting down the tray and glancing nervously at the door. "Madam Amira is already asking about your absence at breakfast." Sarah managed a weak smile. "Thank you, Fatima. Please tell her I'm not feeling well this morning." She noticed the young woman hovering uncertainly. "Is there something else?" Fatima twisted her hands in her apron. I overheard the discussion about the second wife." Her voice dropped even lower. "My sister faced the same situation last year. She tried to fight it, but..." She trailed off, her eyes filling with tears. Sarah reached out and squeezed the young woman's hand. "What happened to your sister, Fatima?" "She lost everything. Her husband's family made sure she had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. They said she was bringing shame to the family by refusing to accept their traditions." Fatima wiped her eyes quickly. "Please be careful, Mrs. Sarah. These families, they have ways of making problems disappear." After Fatima left, Sarah sat at her desk, her untouched breakfast growing cold. She opened her laptop again, reviewing the information she had gathered. Overnight, her research had revealed a network of women's rights organizations operating discreetly in Dubai, offering support to women in situations similar to hers. She had also discovered several blogs and forums where women shared their stories of escape and survival. A new email notification caught her attention. It was from her grandmother's lawyer in New York. Sarah had reached out to him the previous night, inquiring about her grandmother's estate. The response made her heart leap. There was a trust fund in her name, one she hadn't known about, set up years ago by her far-sighted grandmother. The sudden access to financial resources felt like a lifeline being thrown into choppy waters. The sound of voices in the hallway made her tense. She recognized Amira's commanding tone, accompanied by several other women, probably the potential second wife's family coming to tour the house. Sarah's hands clenched into fists as she thought about how they were probably discussing her right now, analyzing her failures, and planning how to smoothly insert another woman into her marriage. Her phone buzzed with a text from Karim. "The Al Fahad family is here. Come downstairs and greet them properly." It wasn't a request, it was an order. Sarah's finger hovered over the reply button when another message came through. "Don't embarrass me, Sarah. Remember your place." Her place. The words sparked something inside her, not fear this time, but anger. She thought about Fatima's sister, about all the other women who had been forced into submission by family traditions. Opening her laptop once more, she began composing an email to one of the women's rights organizations she had found. The response came surprisingly quickly, offering to connect her with a local advocate who specialized in helping foreign wives in distress. A plan began to form in her mind. She couldn't leave immediately. That would be too dangerous. She needed to be smart, to play the long game. First, she would need to secure copies of her important documents, which Karim had safely stored in his office. Then she would need to find a way to access her trust fund without alerting her husband or his family. Most importantly, she would need allies. Another text from Karim flashed on her phone. "You have 5 minutes to come downstairs, or I will come get you myself." Sarah took a deep breath, smoothed her designer dress, and checked her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at her appeared perfectly composed, the very image of an obedient wife. Only her eyes betrayed the fire burning within. As she made her way downstairs, she could hear the pleasant chatter of women's voices floating up from the main salon. They were discussing wedding preparations as if her consent was merely a formality. Sarah paused at the top of the stairs, her hand resting on the ornate banister. For the first time since her confrontation with Karim, she felt something other than fear or despair. She felt purpose. The next few weeks would require the performance of her life. She would need to appear accepting, even enthusiastic about the upcoming changes. She would attend the meetings, smile at the right moments, and play the role they expected of her, all while carefully, methodically putting her plan into action. The meeting with the Al-Fahad family proved to be an exercise in restraint. Sarah sat perfectly poised on the velvet sofa, her face a mask of polite interest as she watched her future co-wife serve tea with practiced grace. Noor Al-Fahad was everything Sarah wasn't: traditionally raised, demurely dressed in an embroidered abaya, and thoroughly versed in the customs that still felt foreign to Sarah after all these months. "Your English is excellent," Sarah commented, maintaining her composed facade as Noor handed her a delicate porcelain cup. The younger woman blushed prettily, casting a quick glance at her mother for approval before responding. "Thank you, Mrs. Al-Rashid. I studied at the American University in Dubai." Noor's voice was soft, careful, everything about her screaming proper breeding and traditional values. Sarah could feel Amira's approving gaze moving between them, no doubt pleased with how smoothly the introduction was proceeding. Later that evening, as Sarah sat at her vanity removing her makeup, she reflected on how convincing her performance had been. Even Karim had seemed pleased, pressing a kiss to her forehead before leaving for his evening business meeting. "You made me proud today, Habibti," he had said, his tone carrying the same patronizing note one might use with a well-behaved child. Once she was sure she was alone, Sarah retrieved her laptop from its hiding place behind the false panel she had discovered in her closet. Her email inbox contained a message from Maya Rahman, the advocate she had contacted. "Meet me tomorrow at the Dubai Mall food court, 2 p.m. Wear something distinctive, a red scarf. I'll find you." Sarah's heart raced as she quickly deleted the email and cleared her browser history. The Dubai Mall was familiar territory. She often went there with her sisters-in-law for shopping trips. It would be easy enough to manufacture a reason to go there alone tomorrow. She had been careful to establish a pattern of shopping therapy over the past few months, making it seem like a natural coping mechanism for her adjustment to traditional life. The next morning, Sarah dressed with particular care, choosing a conservative but expensive outfit that would meet with Amira's approval. She added the red scarf as an accent piece, arranging it artfully around her neck. "I need to pick up some things for the engagement ceremony," she announced at breakfast, watching Amira's face carefully for any sign of suspicion. "Of course, dear," her mother-in-law replied, seemingly pleased by Sarah's initiative. "Take Abdul with you." Abdul was their trusted driver, but Sarah had anticipated this. "Actually, I was hoping to drive myself today," she said, keeping her tone light and casual. "I have so many little errands to run, and I hate to tie up Abdul for hours. Besides," she added with a carefully calculated smile, "I want to surprise everyone with my choices for the celebration." Amira hesitated, but Sarah had played her cards well over the past week, showing unprecedented enthusiasm for the upcoming engagement. Finally, the older woman nodded. "Very well, but please be back before Maghrib prayer. We have the henna ceremony planning to discuss." The drive to Dubai Mall felt like freedom, even though Sarah knew it was temporary. She parked in her usual spot, went through her usual routine of window shopping, even bought a few items to maintain appearances. At exactly 2 p.m., she made her way to the food court, her heart pounding beneath her carefully curated exterior. "Mrs. Al-Rashid?" A woman in a smart business suit approached her table. "I'm Maya Rahman." The advocate sat down, immediately pulling out a tablet and stylus. "We don't have much time, so let's get straight to the point. I've reviewed your situation, and I need to know exactly what you want to achieve." Sarah leaned forward, keeping her voice low. "I need to ensure my safety and independence, but I have to be careful. My husband's family is very powerful here." Maya nodded, her fingers flying over the tablet. "The first step is securing your documents and establishing independent financial resources. Do you have access to your passport?" "No," Sarah admitted. "Karim keeps it in his office safe, along with my other important documents. He says it's for safekeeping, but..." She trailed off, remembering the day he had insisted on this arrangement, presenting it as a normal practice for protecting valuable papers. "That's actually illegal," Maya informed her, her expression grim. "Under UAE law, withholding someone's passport against their will is a crime. However," she added, seeing Sarah's hopeful expression, "proving it can be challenging, especially with influential families. We need to be strategic about this." For the next hour, Maya outlined a careful plan of action. Sarah would need to document everything, every restriction, every threat, every instance of control. They set up a secure cloud storage account under a pseudonym to store evidence. Maya also provided contact information for a network of supportive women who could help if things escalated quickly. "Remember," Maya emphasized as they prepared to part ways, "the key is to maintain normalcy on the surface while we get everything in place." "Can you do that?" Sarah thought about the engagement celebration planning, the endless fittings and ceremonies ahead. "Yes," she replied firmly. "I can play my part." As she walked back to her car, her shopping bags filled with carefully chosen items for the upcoming celebrations, Sarah felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. She was no longer just surviving. She was fighting back even if no one else could see it yet. The henna ceremony preparation had taken over the entire mansion. Elaborate floral arrangements adorned every surface, their sweet perfume mixing with the scent of exotic spices wafting from the kitchen. Sarah stood in the center of the grand ballroom, surrounded by wedding planners and decorators, all waiting for her opinion on the color scheme for Noor's engagement celebration. The irony of helping plan the festivities that would mark the beginning of her own marriage's dissolution wasn't lost on her. The gold and burgundy theme would be traditional, yet elegant, one of the planners suggested, holding up fabric swatches. Sarah nodded, maintaining the enthusiastic facade she had carefully constructed over the past weeks. Inside, her mind was racing, calculating the time she would need in Karim's office during the chaos of the ceremony. "Sarah Habibti," Amira's voice cut through her thoughts. Her mother-in-law glided into the room, resplendent in a heavily embroidered kaftan. "You've been so helpful with the preparations. I must admit I had my doubts about your willingness to embrace our customs, but you've proven me wrong." The praise, though unwanted, confirmed that her performance was working. Sarah smiled warmly, years of marketing presentations helping her maintain her composure. "I want everything to be perfect for our family," she replied, careful to emphasize the word "our" in the way she knew Amira appreciated. Later that afternoon, Sarah retreated to her study under the pretense of reviewing the guest list. Instead, she was documenting every conversation, every subtle threat and every instance of control in the secure cloud account Maya had helped her set up. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she detailed the latest developments, including Karim's increasing demands for her to appear at social functions with Noor, presenting a united front to their social circle. A soft knock interrupted her work. She quickly switched screens as Fatima entered, her face pale with worry. "Mrs. Sarah," she whispered, closing the door carefully behind her. "I overheard something you need to know." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "What is it, Fatima?" "Mr. Karim was speaking with his mother in the garden. Fatima hesitated, wringing her hands. "They're planning to send you to the family's summer house in the mountains after the engagement ceremony. They say it's for your own good, to help you adjust to the new arrangement." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. The summer house was isolated, far from Dubai's city center, with limited internet access and strict security. It would be the perfect place to keep her contained while they proceeded with their plans. "When?" Sarah asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. "The day after the henna ceremony. Mrs. Amira has already instructed the staff to prepare the house." Fatima's eyes filled with tears. "They say you'll have everything you need there, but Mrs. Sarah, my cousin was sent to a similar place when she opposed her husband's wishes. She wasn't allowed to leave for months." Sarah's mind raced. The henna ceremony was in 3 days. Her careful timeline for gathering evidence and securing her documents would have to be accelerated. She couldn't afford to wait any longer. "Thank you, Fatima," she said softly, reaching out to squeeze the young woman's hand. "You've been a true friend." After Fatima left, Sarah sent an encrypted message to Maya, explaining the new development. The response came quickly. "Can you get to the office tonight? We need to move faster." Sarah glanced at her watch. Karim would be attending a business dinner, and Amira would be occupied with the endless wedding preparations. It might be her only chance. As dusk fell over Dubai, Sarah made her way to Karim's office, her heart pounding with each step. She had watched him enter the combination to his safe countless times, pretending to be absorbed in her phone while memorizing each number. The office door opened silently under her touch. She had carefully oiled the hinges the day before, preparing for this moment. The safe was hidden behind a large painting of his grandfather, the family patriarch whose strict adherence to tradition had shaped the dynasty Karim now controlled. Sarah's fingers trembled as she input the combination, praying she had remembered correctly. The soft click of the lock releasing nearly made her gasp with relief. Inside, she found exactly what she needed: her passport, her marriage certificate, and several other crucial documents. She quickly photographed everything with her phone, uploading the images to the secure cloud storage before replacing the originals exactly as she had found them. She couldn't take the documents yet. Their absence would be noticed immediately, but having copies would be essential for what was to come. As she closed the safe and carefully replaced the painting, a noise in the hallway made her freeze. Footsteps approached the office, accompanied by the sound of Karim's voice. He was supposed to be at his dinner meeting. Why was he back so early? Sarah's heart thundered in her chest as Karim's voice grew closer. With swift, silent movements, she slipped behind the heavy, floor-length curtains, pressing herself against the cool window. The office door opened, and Karim's distinctive cologne filled the air as he entered, still engaged in conversation. "Yes, everything is proceeding as planned," he was saying, his voice crisp and businesslike. "Sarah has been surprisingly cooperative. Mother's idea of the summer house was brilliant. It will give us time to establish the new household dynamics, without any complications." Sarah held her breath, straining to hear the response from the person on the other end of the call. The rustle of papers and the creak of Karim's leather chair told her he had settled at his desk, mere feet from where she was hidden. "Of course I understand your concerns," Karim continued, "but trust me, by the time she returns from the summer house, she'll have accepted her new role. We've handled similar situations before." The casual cruelty in his tone made Sarah's blood run cold. This was the real Karim, the one who emerged when he thought no one was watching. Through a tiny gap in the curtains, she could see him leaning back in his chair, completely at ease as he discussed her future imprisonment. The golden light from his desk lamp caught the edge of his wedding ring, the same ring he had placed on her finger with promises of love and equality. "The security measures are already in place," he was saying. "The house staff has been thoroughly briefed. She'll have everything she needs, but no opportunity to create problems. It's for her own good, really. Women can be so emotional about these things." Sarah's muscles screamed in protest as she maintained her rigid position, afraid that the slightest movement would rustle the heavy fabric of the curtains. A bead of sweat trickled down her back, and she silently prayed that Karim wouldn't decide to close the curtains before leaving. The conversation continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Sarah watched as Karim rifled through some papers on his desk, signed a few documents, and finally stood up. Her heart nearly stopped when he walked toward the window, but he only adjusted the air conditioning vent above her head before moving away. "I should go. Mother is waiting to discuss the ceremony arrangements," he said into his phone. "Yes, I'll keep you updated. Good night." The sound of the office door closing behind him was the sweetest sound Sarah had ever heard. Still, she waited, counting slowly to 300 as Maya had taught her, making absolutely sure he was gone. Only then did she slip out from behind the curtains, her legs shaking from the strain of standing so still. She had to get out of the office quickly, but she forced herself to take the time to ensure everything was exactly as she had found it. One misplaced paper, one wrinkle in the curtains could betray her presence. As she made these final adjustments, her mind raced with the implications of what she had overheard. The timeline had just become even more critical. Once she was in the summer house, orchestrating any kind of resistance would be nearly impossible. She needed to act before the engagement ceremony, but how? The house was full of staff loyal to Amira, and Karim's watchful eyes seemed to be everywhere. Sarah slipped out of the office and made her way back to her rooms, maintaining a casual pace despite her urge to run. As she rounded the corner to her wing of the mansion, she nearly collided with Nadia, Karim's youngest sister. "Sarah!" Nadia exclaimed, steadying herself. "What are you doing in this part of the house? I thought you were reviewing the guest. A list's in your study." Sarah's mind raced, but her voice remained steady. "I was looking for Karim, actually. I wanted to discuss some details about the ceremony seating arrangements. Is he in his office?" "No, he's with Mother in the garden room," Nadia replied, studying Sarah's face carefully. "Would you like me to accompany you there?" "Thank you, but no need," Sarah smiled, touching Nadia's arm affectionately. "I should really finish the guest lists first. The seating arrangements can wait until tomorrow." As she walked away, Sarah could feel Nadia's eyes on her back. Had her sister-in-law noticed anything amiss? Would she mention this encounter to Karim or Amira? Sarah pushed the thoughts aside. She couldn't afford to let paranoia paralyze her now. The morning of the henna ceremony dawned bright and clear, the sun casting long shadows across the mansion's marble floors. Sarah sat at her vanity, watching as a team of stylists transformed her into the perfect picture of a supportive first wife. Her fingers trembled slightly as she touched the elaborate necklace Karim had given her that morning, a peace offering, or perhaps a golden chain to bind her further. "You look beautiful, Mrs. Sarah," one of the stylists murmured, adjusting her hijab to frame her face perfectly. In the mirror, Sarah caught Amira watching from the doorway, her expression unreadable. The older woman had barely left her side since the encounter with Nadia 2 days ago, her constant presence a subtle reminder of the surveillance she was under. "The Al-Fahad family will be arriving in an hour," Amira announced, gliding into the room. "Noor is so excited about the ceremony. It's touching to see how eager she is to join our family." The emphasis on our family wasn't lost on Sarah. It was another reminder of her precarious position, of how quickly she could be relegated to the margins of this dynasty she had married into. Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from Maya. "Everything is ready. Are you sure about this?" Sarah's heart raced as she deleted the message immediately. Yes, she was sure. She had to be. The alternative was unthinkable. The mansion was already filling with guests when Sarah descended the grand staircase. The ballroom had been transformed into a scene from Arabian Nights, with flowing fabrics, twinkling lights, and the heady scent of oud perfuming the air. Women in elaborate gowns and sparkling jewelry clustered in groups, their chatter creating a buzz of excitement. Noor sat in the center of the room on an ornate chair, looking radiant, in her traditional dress. Her hands were already being decorated with intricate henna patterns, the dark paste creating swirling designs that would stain her skin with symbols of love and fertility. Sarah approached her, conscious of all eyes watching their interaction. "You look lovely, Noor," Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly across the hushed room. She bent to kiss the younger woman's cheek, playing her part perfectly. "Welcome to the family." The ceremony proceeded according to tradition, with songs, prayers, and celebrations. Sarah moved through it all like an actress in a well-rehearsed play, smiling at the right moments, speaking the right words while her mind raced with the final details of her plan. As the afternoon wore on, she excused herself to freshen up, making her way to her private bathroom. Once inside, she pulled out her phone and sent a quick message to Maya. "Now." The response came immediately. "Car waiting at the west gate. You have 15 minutes. Sarah's hands shook as she quickly changed out of her elaborate ceremony clothes into the simple outfit she had hidden earlier. She pulled out the small bag she had packed with essentials and the copies of her documents. The sound of celebration still drifted up from downstairs, providing cover for her movements. Just as she was about to leave, there was a knock at her bedroom door. "Sarah," it was Nadia's voice. "Are you all right? Mother is asking for you." "Just a moment," Sarah called back, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm not feeling well. Something I ate, perhaps. I'll be right down." "Let me help you," Nadia insisted. "I'm coming in." Sarah's mind raced. She couldn't let Nadia see her changed clothes, the packed bag. But before she could respond, she heard the door handle turning. In that split second, she made a decision that would change everything. Sarah's heart pounded as she made a split-second decision. Instead of hiding or running, she opened the bathroom door and faced Nadia directly. Her sister-in-law stood frozen, in the doorway, taking in Sarah's changed clothes and the packed bag at her feet. For a long moment, neither woman spoke, the sounds of celebration floating up from below like a distant dream. "You're leaving," Nadia said finally. It wasn't a question. Her dark eyes moved from the bag to Sarah's face, something unreadable, flickering in their depths. "You know they'll find you, they always do." "Nadia, please," Sarah began, but stopped when she saw tears forming in her sister-in-law's eyes. To her surprise, Nadia stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. "Do you know why I never married?" Nadia asked quietly, moving to sit on the edge of Sarah's bed. "Everyone thinks it's because I'm too focused on my studies, too modern for traditional marriage. But the truth is, I watched what happened to my sister Layla in her first marriage. She tried to leave too." Sarah's mind raced back to conversations about the family history, the careful way everyone avoided mentioning Layla's first husband. What happened to her? "They brought her back," Nadia whispered, twisting her hands in her lap. "They sent her to a rest house in the mountains until she agreed to be cooperative. By the time she returned, she was different. The sister I knew was gone. That's why I swore I'd never let myself be trapped like that." Understanding dawned on Sarah. "That's why you've been watching me these past weeks. You knew I was planning something." Nadia nodded. "I recognized the signs, the sudden compliance, the perfect behavior. It was exactly what Layla did before she tried to escape." She stood up abruptly, moving to the window. "They're planning. The same thing for you, you know. The summer house, it's the same place they took Layla." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine despite the warm afternoon sun streaming through the windows. "Then you understand why I have to leave now. I can't let them break me, Nadia. I won't." "If I help you," Nadia said slowly, still staring. "Out the window, they'll never forgive me. I'll lose everything, my family, my position, my inheritance. If you don't help me," Sarah countered gently, "you'll have to watch it happen all over again. Could you live with that?" Nadia turned, and Sarah saw something steel-like enter her expression. "The west gate is being watched. Security has been doubled since your suspicious behavior the other day. But I know another way out." She moved quickly to Sarah's closet, pulling out a traditional abaya and hijab. "Put these on over your clothes, quickly." Sarah's hands shook as she donned the traditional garments, her mind racing. "Nadia, if they find out you helped me, then maybe it's time someone in this family stood up for what's right," Nadia interrupted, helping Sarah adjust the hijab to completely cover her hair and part of her face. "There's a service entrance through the kitchen gardens. The staff uses it for deliveries. I can create a distraction in the main hall that will draw the security guards away." Sarah grabbed her bag, then impulsively hugged her sister-in-law. "Thank you," she whispered. "Come with me, you don't have to stay here either." For a moment, something like longing flashed across Nadia's face. Then she shook her head. "No, I need to stay. Someone has to be here to help the next woman they try to break. But first, let me help you get free." She pulled out her phone and quickly typed out a message. "I'm telling them you're not feeling well, and I'm helping you lie down. That should buy you at least 10 minutes. Together, they crept out of Sarah's room and down the service stairs, their footsteps muffled by the sounds of celebration still echoing through the mansion. At each corner, Nadia checked first, before signaling Sarah to follow. The kitchen gardens were mercifully empty, the staff all occupied with the ceremony. The service entrance loomed before them, a simple metal door that represented the threshold between captivity and freedom. Nadia quickly typed in the security code, her fingers moving with practiced precision. "Once you're through this door, turn right and follow the delivery road until you reach the old olive grove. Maya's contact will be waiting there in a silver Hyundai." Sarah clutched her bag tighter, the reality of what she was about to do finally hitting her full force. "Nadia, I don't know how to thank you. Just promise me one thing," Nadia replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "When you're safe, Help other women like us. Break the cycle. A sudden burst of laughter from the main house made them both jump. You need to go. Now. Just as Sarah reached for the door handle, Fatima came rushing around the corner, her face pale with urgency. Mrs. Sarah, Mr. Karim is looking for you. He's checking all the rooms. The three women stared at each other for a frozen moment before Nadia sprang into action. Fatima, you never saw us here. Go back to the kitchen and keep working. She turned to Sarah. You have to run, don't stop for anything. Sarah pushed through the door into the bright afternoon sun, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it over the crunch of gravel under her feet. The delivery road stretched before her, lined with perfectly manicured hedges that offered little cover. She forced herself to walk normally, remembering Maya's advice about not drawing attention. Running would only make her conspicuous. Behind her, she could hear Nadia's voice carrying across the garden, apparently speaking to someone on her phone. Yes, brother, I'm looking for Sarah now. She was feeling unwell earlier. The perfect performance, buying precious minutes. The olive grove seemed impossibly far away. Sarah's legs felt like lead, the abaya uncomfortably warm in the afternoon sun. Every car that passed made her pulse spike. Every distant voice sent a shiver of fear down her spine. She kept expecting to hear shouts of discovery, to see Karim's security team descending upon her. A gardener looked up as she passed, and Sarah forced herself to nod serenely, channeling Amira's regal bearing. The man simply nodded back and returned to his work. Her Western features were hidden behind the traditional clothing, making her just another wealthy woman taking an afternoon walk on the grounds. The sound of approaching vehicles made her slow her pace. Two black SUVs, Karim's security detail, drove past, heading toward the main gate. They were looking for her, but in the wrong direction. Nadia's distraction was working. Finally, the olive grove came into view. The ancient trees stood like silent sentinels, their silver-green leaves rustling in the afternoon breeze. Sarah's pace quickened as she spotted the silver Hyundai parked discreetly among the shadows. A woman in a business suit stepped out of the car, her face professionally neutral. The weather is quite pleasant for a walk, she said quietly, the code phrase Maya had told Sarah to expect. Perfect for viewing the sunset, Sarah responded with the countersign, her voice shaking slightly. The woman nodded and opened the passenger door. Just as Sarah was about to get in, a shout echoed across the grounds. Her blood ran cold as she recognized Abdul's voice, the family's head of security. They had discovered her absence sooner than expected. Get in, the woman urged, already sliding behind the wheel. Now! Sarah threw herself into the car, her bag landing at her feet. As the door slammed shut, she caught a glimpse of figures running toward the olive grove. The car's engine roared to life and they pulled away with deliberate smoothness. No squealing tires, nothing to draw attention. Keep your head down, the woman instructed as they approached the main gate, and whatever happens, stay silent. She rolled down her window and waved casually to the security guard, who was already reaching for his radio. The first hour of freedom felt surreal as the silver Hyundai wound its way through Dubai's busy streets. Sarah's heart continued to race every time she spotted a black SUV in traffic, but her driver, who had introduced herself as Samira, navigated with calm precision, taking a series of seemingly random turns designed to reveal any potential followers. Your sister-in-law's distraction worked perfectly, Samira said, checking her mirrors for the 100th time. The security teams were completely focused on the main gates. By the time they reorganize and start searching in the right direction, we'll be long gone. Sarah clutched her bag in her lap, her knuckles white. Where are we going? They'll check all the hotels. We're not going to a hotel, Samira replied, smoothly changing lanes. Maya has arranged a safe house on the outskirts of the city. It's registered to a local women's charitable organization, completely above board and legitimate. Your husband's influence won't reach there. The implications of what she had done were starting to sink in. Sarah had left behind everything, her clothes, her jewelry, all the trappings of her luxurious life. But she had also left behind the suffocating control, the constant surveillance, and the looming threat of the summer house. Her hand moved to her pocket, where she could feel the hard edge of her phone. We need to get rid of that, Samira said, noticing the movement. They can track it. She pulled into a busy shopping center parking lot. Wait here. She returned, moments later with a basic burner phone and a new SIM card. Maya's number is already programmed in. Use it only when absolutely necessary. As they drove on, the gleaming skyscrapers of downtown Dubai gave way to more modest neighborhoods. The safe house turned out to be a simple but clean apartment in a building that housed various charitable organizations. A sign in the lobby announced Women's Educational and Professional Development Center in both Arabic and English. The Xianxi entire building is monitored by security cameras, Samira explained as she led Sarah to a third-floor apartment. The footage is reviewed by our own security team, not local law enforcement. You'll be safe here. The apartment was small but comfortable, with basic furnishings and a small kitchen. On the dining table, Sarah found a folder containing a new passport, identification documents, and a bank card. She picked up the passport with trembling hands, seeing an unfamiliar name but her own photo. Everything's legitimate, Samira assured her. The documents were processed through proper channels under a humanitarian assistance program. Your new identity is clean and completely legal. A knock at the door made them both freeze, but Samira relaxed when she checked the security monitor. Maya entered, looking professional as always in her business suit, carrying several shopping bags. Clothes, toiletries, and some basic supplies, she explained, setting the bags down. How are you holding up, Sarah? The simple question broke. Something inside her. Sarah sank onto the couch, tears finally flowing freely. I can't believe I actually did it. But Nadia, what will happen to her? And Fatima? Nadia sent word through our secure channel, Maya said, sitting beside her. She's fine. The family believes she was genuinely trying to find you when you disappeared. Her position as the dutiful daughter is intact, which means she can continue helping others. As for Fatima, she was in the kitchen the entire time, according to multiple witnesses. She's safe. Sarah wiped her eyes, trying to focus. What happens now? Now you rest, Maya said firmly. The next few days will be crucial. Karim will use every resource at his disposal to find you, but he'll be looking for a Western woman traveling alone. No one will look twice at a traditionally dressed Arab woman working at a women's charitable organization. The reality of her new life was beginning to sink in. No more luxury shopping trips, no more expensive restaurants, no more social events with Dubai's elite, but also no more constant supervision, no more subtle threats, no more fear of being sent away to be reformed. There's something else you should know, Maya said, her expression serious. While you were making your escape, we received word from another woman seeking help, someone you know. Noor Al-Fahad reached out through our network. Sarah stared at Maya in disbelief, trying to process this new information. Noor? But she seemed so accepting of everything. She was the perfect traditional bride they wanted me to be. Sometimes. The quietest ones carry the heaviest burdens, Maya replied, pulling out her tablet. Noor reached out through a university friend who volunteers with our organization. She's been planning her own escape for months, gathering evidence of her family's attempts to force her into this marriage. The revelation shifted Sarah's entire perspective. All those demure smiles, the perfect manners, the careful compliance. She recognized the act because she had been performing the same one. I didn't even consider that she might be trapped too. I was so focused on my own situation. That's exactly what these families count on, Samira interjected, returning from securing the perimeter. They keep women isolated, even from each other, making each one feel like she's alone in her struggle. It's how they maintain control. Maya pulled up a series of encrypted messages on her tablet. Noor has been documenting everything. The emotional manipulation, the threats, the way they've been using her younger sisters as leverage to force her compliance. She's actually been helping other women in similar situations for the past year, working secretly with our network. Sarah thought back to all her interactions with Noor, seeing them in a new light. The careful way the younger woman had watched her, the subtle hints in their conversations that she had missed, too caught up in her own pain to notice. We have to help her. We will, Maya assured her, but first, we need to make sure you're secure. Karim's influence reaches far and he won't give up easily. The next 48 hours are critical. As if to emphasize her point, Samira's secure phone buzzed with an alert. They've just issued a notice to all airports and border crossings, she reported grimly. They're claiming you've had a mental breakdown and need to be returned to your family for treatment. It's a common tactic. It makes any attempt to seek help look like the actions of an unstable person. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, remembering Karim's words about the summer house. How many other women had been labeled unstable and sent away to be reformed? How many had eventually broken under the pressure, returning as shadows of their former selves? What about my grandmother's inheritance? Sarah asked, remembering the financial lifeline that had made her escape possible. Can they freeze those accounts? The accounts are secure, Maya assured her. We've already transferred the funds through a series of legitimate charitable organizations. On paper, you've made a generous donation to women's education initiatives. The money is now clean and untraceable, ready for you to access through your new identity. A notification flashed on Maya's tablet, another encrypted message from their network. Her expression grew serious as she read it. Noor's situation has become more urgent. Her family has moved up the wedding timeline. They're planning to have the ceremony next week, followed by an immediate trip to their family compound in the countryside. Sarah straightened up, pushing aside her own fears. We can't let that happen, not when she's so close to getting out. It's too dangerous, Samira protested. You've barely escaped yourself. Getting involved in another extraction now could compromise everything. But Sarah was already shaking her head. I spent weeks thinking I was alone, feeling trapped and hopeless. I can't just sit here safely while Noor goes through the same thing. There has to be a way to help her without risking either of our safety. Maya studied Sarah thoughtfully. Actually, your escape might provide the perfect cover for helping Noor. The families will be focused on finding you, which could create a diversion we need, but it would require perfect timing and coordination. And it would mean trusting Noor completely, Samira added. Are you sure she's not part of an elaborate trap? Sarah thought about the carefully maintained facade she had lived behind, the secret strength it had taken to plan her escape, while playing the role of the perfect wife. Yes, I'm sure. I recognize the look in her eyes now. It's the same one I saw in my mirror every morning. 1 month later, Sarah stood at the window of her new apartment in London, watching the rain create patterns on the glass. The weather was a stark contrast to Dubai's perpetual sunshine, but she found comfort in the change. Her phone buzzed with a message from Maya. Turn on Al Jazeera English. The television screen filled with images of a press conference where Noor Al-Fahad, dressed in professional attire, stood at a podium addressing an international audience. Her voice was clear and strong as she spoke about the foundation she had established to help women trapped in forced marriages. Today we announce the creation of the New Beginnings Initiative, Noor was saying, her composed demeanor a far cry from the demure bride-to-be she had once pretended to be. This organization will provide legal support, safe housing, and educational opportunities for women seeking to escape oppressive situations. Sarah smiled, remembering the intricate plan that had led to this moment. After her own escape, the outrage and scandal had created the perfect diversion for Noor to implement her own carefully crafted exit strategy. While Karim's family had been focused on finding Sarah, Noor had used her extensive documentation and network of supporters to seek legal protection and asylum. The press conference continued as Noor revealed shocking statistics about forced marriages and domestic oppression. She never mentioned specific names or families, but her evidence was irrefutable. The international media attention had forced authorities to acknowledge the issue, leading to unprecedented scrutiny of traditional practices that had long been hidden behind walls of wealth and privilege. Sarah's laptop chimed with an incoming video call. When she accepted, Nadia's face appeared on the screen, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Are you watching?" "Yes," Sarah replied, feeling a surge of emotion. "She's incredible." "The family is in chaos," Nadia reported with a hint of satisfaction. "Between your escape and Noor's revelations, they've lost their iron grip on everything. More importantly, other women are starting to speak up. The younger generation, is questioning traditions that were once accepted without thought. And you? Sarah asked softly. Are you safe? Nadia's smile was triumphant. More than safe. I've been appointed to the board of directors for the New Beginnings initiative. Turns out my years of studying international law while pretending to be the perfect daughter had a purpose after all. The family can't touch me now. It would cause too much scandal. Another message popped up on Sarah's phone, this one from Fatima. My sister started university classes today. Thank you for showing us it was possible to choose a different path. The dominoes they had set in motion were still falling. What had begun as one woman's desperate bid for freedom had evolved into a movement that was quietly but fundamentally changing lives. The women's network that had helped Sarah and Noor was now stronger than ever, operating openly as a legitimate charitable organization with international backing. Sarah thought about her grandmother's inheritance, which had made her escape possible. She had used a portion of it to help establish a scholarship fund for women seeking education and independence. The fund was named in honor of her grandmother, whose final letter had given Sarah the courage to take that first crucial step toward freedom. There's something else you should know, Nadia said, drawing Sarah's attention back to the screen. Amira came to see me yesterday. She's different. Watching everything unfold, seeing other women stand up and speak out, it's made her question her own life choices. She asked about you. Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions. What did she want to know? If you were safe? If you were happy? Nadia paused. I think, in her own way, she's beginning to understand. She mentioned that her own mother had once tried to escape an arranged marriage. She never spoke of it before. On the television, Noor was concluding her press conference. To every woman who feels trapped, who believes she has no choice, I want you to know you are not alone. There is help, there is hope. Your life is your own, and you have the right to choose your path. Sarah touched the screen gently, remembering the frightened young woman she had once mistaken for a willing participant in her own oppression. Now Noor stood as a beacon of hope for others, her quiet strength transformed into powerful advocacy. A final message came through on her phone, this one from Maya. Ready to tell your story? The world is ready to listen. Sarah looked around. Her apartment, modest compared to her Dubai mansion, but filled with something far more valuable: freedom. She thought about all the women still trapped behind gilded walls, believing they were alone in their struggle. Her fingers moved across the keyboard as she typed her response. Yes, it's time for another voice to join the chorus. In the end, Sarah realized, true strength wasn't in escaping alone. It was in reaching back to help others find their way to freedom. Each woman who broke free created a crack in the foundation of oppression, and together they were building something new, a future where daughters would never have to choose between family and freedom. Dear listeners, we hope Sarah's journey of courage and transformation has touched your hearts. This story reminds us that true strength often lies in helping others find their own path to freedom. If you've been moved by this tale of resilience and solidarity, please subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that explore the complexity of human relationships and the power of choosing your own destiny. Don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps us continue bringing these important narratives to light. Remember, there's always hope for a new beginning, and sometimes the bravest thing we can do is take that first step toward change. Join us tomorrow for another powerful story that will remind you of the extraordinary strength within ordinary people.